Okay, started. Okay. Okay. So we have seen about break and continue statement in loops. Okay. Now, how do we declare a for loop?
For loop, we have to write a word for. After that, we have to initialize a variable, instance variable. After that, we have to give the range for the variable and increment,
No, no, no.
and we get
Not,
a string.
not an instance variable actually, but like now we start with a for keyword. Okay. And then we will initiate a data type here, data type variable. Okay. And then we'll have a condition for that data type variable and also either increment or decrement.
Yes.
Okay, this is how we declare for loop. Okay, now okay, we have seen like continue break statement and continue in this one. Okay, let's say what is a labeled break here. Okay, now let us say I'm creating like another class here. Okay, let us say I have something here which is okay for I is equal to 0. I'm just taking like I is less than or equal to 3. I'm taking. Okay, and here I'm saying that system.out.println I am outside loop, outside for loop. Okay, now this is done. Take out all these things. Okay, okay. What does this program do? It will print okay 3 times like okay I'm outside for loop. Okay, if I run this one, run as Java application. Okay, I am outside for loop. It is printing 3 times, and after that it is printing end of program. Okay, let us say like rest of program. Okay, and then finally once everything is done, and say end of program. Okay, so this is the okay. Now this is a for loop, normal for loop that we have seen yesterday. Okay. Okay. Now let us say I have a nested for loop. Nested for loop means for loop within a for loop. So I can write it as for int j equals to 1, j is less than or equals to 3, j plus plus. Okay, I will say system.out.println I am inside, sorry, yeah, I am inside for loop. Okay, now what happens? The first time it prints when I value becomes 1, the first time it prints I am outside for loop, and then when j value becomes 1, it prints inside for loop. Again, j value becomes 2, it prints inside for loop. Again, j value becomes 3, it prints outside inside for loop. And then it will come to the outside for loop again, and then it prints again, I am outside for loop. Okay, like that. For each time it is printing I am outside for loop, this will be executed 3 times and it will be printing I am inside for loop. Okay, let me put like some hyphens here so that we can understand this one clearly. Okay, okay. Now if I run this one, run as Java application. Okay, so for every time it is printing I am outside for loop, it is printing 3 times inside for loop. Okay, do you understand this program until this point?
Yes.
Okay, okay, fine. Now let us say I'm using here like okay when okay j sorry if okay j value is equals to 2, okay, break. I'm using if j value becomes 2, okay, then break. That means the first time when I value becomes 1, or like let me take like an I value itself, I value. Okay, when I value is becomes 2, break. Okay, so when I value becomes 1, it prints I'm outside for loop, and it prints 3 times I am inside for loop. Okay, because I value is not equals to 2. Okay, now when I value becomes 2, it executes this statement, but when it comes to this inside for loop, since I value is becoming 2, it won't execute this one. It comes out of this for loop, out of this for loop. So it comes here. Okay, so it goes back again and it executes I am outside for loop again. Okay, so in this case you won't see the second set of steps. Okay, now let me run this one, run as Java application. Okay, see, it is not executing the second set of these statements for this outside for loop. Okay, do you understand this one? We are just breaking out of this for loop when I
Yeah, got it.
okay, and I value is becoming 2. Okay, now my mm, okay, I want to come out of this outside for loop, not this inside for loop. Whenever I value becomes 2, I want to come out of this outside for loop, not this inside for loop. Okay, if you simply use this break statement in any for loop, only it will come out of that current out loop. Okay, not any other for loop. Okay, so if I want to come out of this for loop, then we have to use labeled breaks. Okay, labeled breaks means we will label this outside for loop with some label. So I'll say outer loop. Okay, I can label it like this. Okay, just give a name and a colon here. Okay, now it became a labeled for loop. Okay, and I can say break outer loop. Okay, this is a labeled break. That means whenever the value of I becomes 2, it comes out of the loop, okay, which we have labeled it as outer loop. Okay, so here it will come out of this for loop. Okay, now if I run this one, run as Java application, see, I am the first time when the value of I becomes 1, okay, it printed I am outside for loop. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, and it goes into this inside for loop and it executes because I value is 1, it won't execute this condition, but it executes 3 times I am inside for loop. So that's why we are saying I am inside for loop here 3 times. Okay, now I value becomes 2 here. So it executes I am outside for loop here. So this is one I am outside for loop. Okay, now it goes into the inside for loop, and since the value of I became 2 now, it is breaking out of this outer loop. So what is this one? Out of this outer loop means this one. Okay, so it comes out of this outer loop. So it is printing the rest of the program and end of the program. Okay, so this is what outer loop, labeled break. This is called labeled break. That means we are coming out of an labeled break. We are okay. If when we have like nested loops, okay, and if we want to come out of an outer loop, okay, in any program, then we can use labeled breaks. Okay, this is a labeled break. Okay, now. Uh, Okay, now let us see what is labeled continue. What does it mean by continue? Continue means it comes to the end of the loop. Okay, it comes to the end of the loop basically. Okay, so let us say in this case, okay, continue. Let me take out the label for this one. Okay, now what happens in this case?
So inner loop will going to be end.
Yeah, so what will be the output here? So the first time when I value becomes 1, it prints I am outside loop and it goes into this one. Okay. Okay, let me do one more thing here. Like, I'll say hyphen, okay, plus I. I will say hyphen, okay, plus J. So we'll print these values also. Okay, in this case, let me just comment this one temporarily so that you'll understand this more. Okay, so okay, when the I value of became 1, okay, it is printing I am outside loop hyphen 1, and it is printing I am inside loop, inside for loop. Okay, and it is printing the 3 values 1 2 3. When it becomes 2 outside for loop, value becomes 2, it is printing outside for loop 1 2 3. When the value of I becomes 3, it is printing value of j, it is printing as 3 times outside for loop and 3 times. Okay. Okay. Now let me take out this comment. Okay. Okay. Just one thing. Okay. So what is how do we do commenting in this one? Okay. We can use single two forward slashes. Wherever whatever the line you want to comment, you can use two forward slashes. Okay. This is a single line commenting. Okay. For example, if you want to use like multiple line commenting, then you can use forward slash star and then again star forward slash. Okay, if you use this one, this is a multi-line commenting in Java. Okay, just remember this one. Either if you want to use do single line commenting, two forward slashes. If it is multi-line commenting, just forward slash star and then star forward slash. Okay, this is multi-line commenting. Okay. Okay. Now, so we have seen this one. Okay. Now, when the value of I becomes 2, continue. So when the value of I becomes 1, okay, it prints this one. Value, let us use value of okay, no, not a problem. Okay, so it prints like I'm outside loop and it prints 1 here. Since the value of I is 1, okay, it won't execute this one. It will execute 3 times I'm inside for loop. Okay, now when the value of I becomes 2, when the value of I becomes 2, what happens when the value of I becomes 2? Okay, it will print this I'm outside for loop. Okay, and it comes here. It comes here. It comes here and it will check for this condition if I equals to continue. That means it won't print this one for the second time. Okay. Now, when the value of I becomes 3, it prints this one again and it prints 3 times this one. Okay. Let me run this one. Run as Java application. Okay. See, when the value of I became 2, okay, since in this case, all the 3 times it comes to the end of this loop. So it will never print this one. Okay. Now let us say I want to come to the end of the outer for loop, not the inner for loop. Okay. So then in those cases, again, it is a labeled continue that we have used. Okay. We have to use outer loop. Okay. And then I'll say continue outer loop. When we use like this, it will come to the end of the for loop. Okay. So if I run this one again, it will, I think like it will give the same result. Yes, because it is coming to the end of the for loop. Okay. Do you understand this one? Break statement is mainly used to break out of the current for loop. If we use a labeled break is used when we have nested for loops, and if we want to come out of any outer loop, then we can use labeled break. Similarly, continue is used to go to the end of the current for loop, okay, in any loop. Labeled continue is used to go to the end in a nested for loop or in nested loops. If we want to go to the end of any outer loop, then we use labeled continue. Okay. Any questions?
So Subbu, like if we are not putting any label, so by default, which loop will we get like
Only the current one. Only the current one. See,
inside
yeah,
like
yeah, inside for loop. See, this is a nested for
okay.
loop, right? This is a nested for loop. See, this is one for loop, and we have okay. This is one for loop, and we have another for loop inside this one. Okay. So if I use just to continue or break, okay, if I use break, it will come out of this current for loop only, inside for loop only. But if you want to come out of the outer loop, then you have to label that outer loop and you have to use that label here. Break this one or continue this one.
Okay, got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Let's give- okay. Hmm. Okay. Fine. Uh, okay. So that is about for loops. Okay. So continue break, continue labeled break and labeled continue. Okay, you understand this one now. Now let us go into another loop which is called while loop. Okay, so the structure for a for loop is defined. Yeah, for loop is defined like this. That means we have to have the for keyword and we have to have an initialization of a variable. So we have initialized an integer variable here for a int I equal to 1, and then we have to have a condition, and then we have to have an increment here. Okay, similarly, let's go into the while loop. I'm creating a class here. Okay, while sorry, example. Okay, so in a while loop, what do we do? Okay, how do we declare that one? Okay, we'll have a keyword while here. Okay. Okay, we'll have a keyword while here, and within this while, this is not this one. Okay, within this one, okay, what we have to do, we can print like, let me say I'm just printing. Okay, okay, it is still giving this error. Public static requirements. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, we have seen level break, continue, and level continue. We have seen. Yeah. Okay, so we'll have something like this. Okay, while here. Okay, while. Okay, but before this, okay, we have to initialize the variable outside here. Okay, for example, int I is equal to 0. Okay, and then we have to put the condition within this while here. Okay, I is less than 10. Okay, I'm printing while loop example. Okay, here. Okay, in a for loop, how do we do it? Like, let me give you this declaration here. For int I equals to 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. That means we are doing the initialization inside the for loop. But in a while loop, we will do the initialization outside this loop. Okay, and we have a condition here, like for a for loop. The same condition we will put it here inside the while. Okay, so this increment or decrement, generally we do it at the end of this while loop. Okay, I plus plus. Okay, do you understand this one? So here we will do the initialization at the before the while loop. Why int I is equal to 0. Okay, we will check the condition within this here. Okay, within the while. Okay, we will do the increment or decrement at the end of the loop. So this is how we write a while loop. Okay, if I execute this one now, run as, okay, while loop example. So first I value will become 0, and before entering this while condition, it checks whether this condition. So here 0 is less than 10, so it prints while loop example. Now the value of I becomes 1. Okay, now it goes back again and checks if the value of I is less than 10, which is true. So it prints this one. So until, let's say I value is 9 now. Okay, 9 is less than 10, so it prints this one. Okay, it prints this while loop example. Okay, so it is printing here this one. Okay, now the value of I becomes 10 here, I plus plus. So is 10 less than 10? No, so it comes out of this loop. Okay, so do you understand this while loop?
Yeah, I understand, but by any chance, is there any kind of a certain condition where we can use only while loop, not for loop, or vice versa?
It depends on, actually most of the times we go for loop. Okay, most of the times we go for loop only. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
Rarely we use like while loops.
So
Okay.
is there a demand of a programming or like just for a,
No, it depends on us. It completely depends on us. Okay.
okay, it's not
I,
an
I,
not
I,
an
I,
compulsory.
I will tell you like no, it's not compulsory. These are different ways actually. But I will tell you a
Okay.
situation where we go for a while loop. Okay, rarely. Okay, let
Okay.
me tell
Okay.
you that one. Okay, let's say okay. Let us say I have initialized this one. Our int I is equal to 0. Okay, and int I is less than 10. Okay, what happens if I don't write this one I plus plus? If I don't use this increment or decrement, what happens in this case? It will go into an infinite loop. Okay, because I value is always 0 and it is always less than 10. So it goes into an infinite loop and it prints this statement like that, like, it won't stop. Let me run this one. Okay, run as Java application. Okay, see, it is printing like this. It's not ending. Okay. So in Eclipse, like, whenever when you are practicing and if you face this problem, see here there is a red color button. Are you able to see this red color button?
Yes.
Okay, just click on that and it will terminate the program. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is how like you go into an infinite loop. Okay. Now, in some cases, generally, like, sometimes we may need to go into an infinite loop. Okay. So in those cases, generally what we do is, okay, we'll take this one, okay, out and we'll say while true. This is what we use.
Okay.
Okay. While true, so it goes into an infinite loop. Goes into an infinite loop. So if I run this one, run as Java application, and it goes into an infinite loop. Okay. Okay. Now let me do one more thing. How do we go into an infinite loop using for loop? Okay. Let's say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 3, I plus plus. Okay. System dot out system.out.println. Okay, for loop example. Okay, so now it prints 3 times, right? It prints 3 times. If I want to go into an infinite loop, just you can take out the second one. I is less than 3. Okay, I is equal to 0, I is less than 3. So I value is 0 initially and then it keeps on increasing. But since we don't have a condition here, it goes into an infinite loop. See, it is going into an infinite loop. Okay, this is how you can create an infinite loop here. Or you can also do it something like just remove everything here. Okay, so in this case also we can have an infinite loop. Okay, so this is how we can create an infinite loop in for loop. But generally when we go into an infinite loop, we use only while this one, while true, then yes, ma'am. So generally, if we go into like this, how do we come out of this while loop? Okay, so we use some condition here. Okay, something uh, in one of the previous examples, like that we have done. Okay, uh, let me explain you that one. Okay, this is in Selenium, like in the one of the previous scripts that we have done. This is a web page that we have. Okay, and we have some number of rows. Okay, we have some number of we have like multiple we have table on this page. Okay, let's say this is a table. Okay, and then here we will have some pagination like 1 2 3 like this. We have some multiple number of pages. Okay, in the this is not a perfect example, but I'm telling you this one. Okay, so we have like some value that we need in one of the rows in all these tables on these multiple pages. Okay, somewhere we'll have like some row that we need. Okay, we don't know where that would be. So what we have to do, we have to go and check like each row on this table, and if that value is not there on this page, then we have to click on the next page, and then we have to search the entire table if it is not there, and then we have to go into the next page, and then we have to search this table. Okay, like that we have to do it till the end. Okay, so in that case, like what we'll do is we'll go, we can use an infinite loop. Okay, we can use an infinite loop, and we'll search the value, each and every value. If then we'll use an if condition. If the value is found, okay, if the value is found, then break. Okay, if the value is found on one pages in those tables, then break. In those cases we use and another situation where I have used is, okay, so when we are working on like some application, okay, there is one scenario where, okay, we have to change the password. We have to change the password, but we will get an OTP to our mobile. Okay, so that scenario cannot be automated. Okay, it's not possible to automate all the scenarios. Okay, there are some situations. For example, one of the scenarios, we will get an OTP to the land phone. Okay, so we have to hear that land phone, and we have to enter that value. We have to enter that value in a text field. So that scenario cannot be automated, because we'll get that OTP to the land phone. Similarly, we'll get that OTP to the mobile. But the way that we automated is, okay, we used some infinite loop here for this one. Okay, where we have to enter an OTP. Okay, we used an infinite loop. Okay, and what we did is, like, okay, the OTP is always like 6 digits, that we know. Okay, so we once we get an OTP to the mobile or to the land phone, then we take that one and we enter that. Okay, each time we enter this number, okay, we check the length of the number that is entered within the for loop or within the while loop. Okay, once that length is like 6 digits, okay, that length is like 6 digits. If the length of that string that we have entered is 6 digits, then it will break out of that while loop. Okay, this is a scenario that we have used. Okay, but that involves like the manual intervention, but generally I'm giving an example here. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. And what other example that I can? Yeah, this one again. Do you guys understand this one? When we go for some infinite loops.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is clear now.
Yeah. So if we want to go for an infinite loop, generally then we will go with the while loop only, because it is simple. While true, just do it. Okay, and use a condition inside that and break out of that while loop. Okay, okay, fine. So this is about while loop. Okay, now since like the break, labeled break, and continue, and labeled break and labeled continue, just to practice those with this while loop. Okay, that is an example for you. That is an exercise for you. Okay, are any questions you have?
No, it is clear now.
Okay, so just practice that break, continue, labeled break, and labeled continue with while loop. Okay, now let me tell you like another example, which is, let me take out this one. Okay, so and the next one is do while loop. Okay, what is a do while loop? Okay, do while loop means, okay, what is a do while loop? Okay, in do while loop, okay, what we will have is, we will have a do statement before. Okay, here we have a while statement, and but in case of a do while loop, we'll have a do statement before, and then in the end of the program we will have a while statement, and then the condition here, I is less than 10. Okay, in this case also, okay, in this case also we have to define the I here before the loop. So I'll say int I is equal to 0. Okay, and we'll have a semicolon here. Okay, and then we'll have the condition inside the loop generally at the end of the loop. Okay, so we have the initialization before the loop, just like a while loop, and in a do while loop we will have do statement before and a while statement after the loop. Okay, and we have the condition here, and within the loop we'll have this one. Okay, so how does it execute? First the value of I becomes 0 and it enters the loop and it executes this one. Okay, now I value becomes 1 here. Okay, so it checks if I is less than 10. Yes, I is less than 10. Then it again goes into the loop and it prints, let's say I'm going do while example. Okay, so it prints do while loop example and I value becomes 2 now, and it checks whether I value is less than 10 or not. Yes, I value is less than 10. So then it goes like this. So when the I value of becomes 10, it checks, well, I is less than 10 or not. No. Okay, it is failing here. So it comes out of the loop. Okay, so run as Java application. Okay, do while example. Okay, got this one, got the, or you have any questions here for the do while loop?
No, I
Okay.
think it is similar to all previous loops only, but only the
Yeah.
syntax is getting changed.
Yeah, format is different. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For this one also, like, try the break, continue, label break, and label continue. Okay. Okay. Now we have seen for loop, while loop, and do while loop, right? While loop and do while loop, they are a little bit similar. Okay. But what is the difference between a while loop and do while loop?
think
What is?
in do while loop, at least the statements will be executed within the loop at least once.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let me show you this one. While I is less than 10, okay, system.out.println, okay, while loop example, okay, and I plus plus. Okay, in this one I'll say int j is equal to 0, okay, j plus plus, and j is less than 10. Okay, let me show you this example. Okay, in a while loop, okay, when this condition, if this condition is not met, okay, this loop won't be executed at all. The while loop won't be executed at all. But in a do while loop, if this condition is not met, okay, these statements will be executed at least once, because in a do while loop we have the condition at the end of the loop, but in a while loop we have the condition at the beginning. Okay, let me show you this one. I'm just saying system.out.println. Okay, so instead of 10, and let me take 3 here also. Let me take 3 times I'm printing. Okay, let me run this one, run as Java application. So I'm printing while loop example and do while loop example. Okay, okay. Now in a while loop, let me say I'm taking it as 4, I value is 4, j value is 4. Okay, what happens in this case? Okay, if you see the condition is not meeting here, is I value less than 4? No, it is not less than 4. This condition is failing. So this loop won't be executed at all. Okay, but in this case, if you see j value is equal to 4, is this condition meeting? No, this is not, this condition is failing here. Okay, but even though the condition is failing, it still goes into the loop here, because the order of execution is this way. First it comes here, then it comes here, then it comes here, like this. Okay, so there is no condition here. Here in a do while loop, the condition is at the end of the loop. That is why it goes into this into this do while loop, and it executes this one, and then it checks the condition. Is j value is less than 3? No, and then it goes out of the loop. So in a while loop, it won't print the state. It won't executes the statement not even once if the condition is failing. But in a do while loop, even though the condition fails initially, the do while loop will be executed at least once. Okay, let me run this one. Run as Java application. Okay, see do while example, it is executing at least once, but not the while loop. Okay, understand guys this one? Are any questions?
That is clear now.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. What would be the real scenario that we have to do, like do while any example?
I haven't faced any situation so far, like where I wanted to execute, the statements at least once. I haven't faced this situation so far.
Okay. Very rare, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is always like generally if I want to use like a loop, I go for a for loop or while loop. I never use
Okay.
do while loop actually. So it's very rare that you may get a situation like this where you want to execute the set of steps at least once.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Fine. Now, okay. So let me go into the document. Okay, let me see if I'm missing. Okay, so you can try these breaks and labeled breaks, continue and labeled continuous for while loops and do while loops. Okay, so I have given the examples here. Okay, you can try these ones. Okay, now okay, while loops and yeah, this is all like inner while loops, do loops and inner do while loops. You can practice like all these examples. Okay, okay. Now is there anything else that I need to cover in this one? Java loops, difference between while loop and do while loop. Like we have seen that one just now. Okay, infinite for loop we have seen it. Infinite while loop we have seen this one. Okay, similarly in infinite do while loop you can use do and then while true. This is what like you can use for infinite do while loop. Okay, so these are like exercises for you. So practice like all these examples. Okay, now let me go into the interview questions for this one. Okay, so what types of loops are supported by Java? So this is a very people won't ask you like any question like this until unless you go as a fresher for any interview. Okay, for loop, while loop, do while loop. We have like other kind of iterations. We have something called advanced for loop, and also we have something called iterators. Okay, those we will see them when we come to arrays and collections. Okay, for now like just loops are like for loop, while loop and do while loop. Just remember this one. Okay, and what is yeah, enhancer for loop, we'll see it like when it comes to arrays or collections. Okay, so don't worry about this one at this moment. Okay, so yeah, what is the difference between a break statement and continuous statement? This is a medium priority question. Okay, sometimes people may ask it like in the interviews. Okay, what is the difference between a break statement and a continuous statement? Break statement comes out of the loop. Okay, continuous statement goes to the end of the loop. The execution, it goes to the end of the loop. So when it goes to the end of the loop, it goes back again to the start of the loop. Okay. Okay. How can you anticipatedly exit from a loop using break statement? Okay. What is the difference between a labeled break and labeled and an unlabeled break statement? Okay. So a normal statement, a normal break statement, okay, comes out of the current loop, for loop, while loop, or do while loop. But if you want to come out of an outer loop, then we use a labeled break. Okay, similarly unlabeled and labeled continue. So a normal continue statement brings the execution to the end of the current loop, but if you use a labeled continue statement, it we can go to the end of an outer loop. Okay, Okay, so can a first statement loop indefinitely? Yes. So if we use it something like this, then we can go infinitely. Okay. So these are like, you know, the main things are break and continue statements, labeled break and labeled continue statements. And now what is the difference between while loop and do while loop? Okay. Understand? Are any questions in this one? Okay, fine. Now let's go into the next chapter, which is constructors. Okay. So what is a constructor in Java? Okay, why do we use constructors? Okay, so constructors are generally used to initialize the instance variables of a for an object. Okay, why do we use constructors? Constructors are used to initialize the instance variables, that is also called as the state of an object. Okay, that is why we use constructor. A constructor is a block of flow code that is used to initialize the variables of a newly created object. If variables means here it is generally the instance variables. Okay, we can use them to initialize the class variables also. Class variables are static variables, but for class variables or static variables, generally we use something called static blocks, okay, which we'll see them later. But in case of instance variables, okay, to initialize the instance variables for a newly created object, we use constructors. Okay, let me give you an example here. Okay, so I have created a class here. Okay, now let me declare some two variables. Okay, let us say I'm creating a string here. String name is equal to something Rajesh. Okay, no, I'm not creating anything. Okay, name. Okay, and then I'll say int salary. Let us say these are my two instance variables. So what are instance variables in Java? Anyone?
Yeah, variable that is created inside a class, but uh,
Yeah.
we don't have to use a
Inside?
static keyword before that, and we have to
Yeah.
call it by creating an object.
Yeah. Okay. So this is since we are not we are creating inside a class outside of any method, and we are not using any static keyword here. So this is an instance variable. Okay. So what are the default values for instance variables? What are the different default values? Because we haven't initialized these values. Okay. What are the different default values? For strings, it is generally null.
Space it
Yeah, strings it is null. And what about int?
0.
0. 0 is the default value. So these are the default values that we have. Okay. Now let me show you this one. System.out.println. Okay. Name. Okay. And then system.out.println. Okay. Salary. Okay, but here we are trying to access these values directly in a static method, so it is giving an error here. So what should we do? We have to create an object for accessing these values. Okay, constructor example. Okay, constructor example equals to new. Okay, we have created an object, this object. So we have to use this object to access these values. Okay, now if we run this one, okay, null and 0 because we haven't initialized these values. Okay, they will always return, yeah, they will always return the default values. Okay, now while creating an object, I would like to initialize these values. Okay, for that purpose we have to use constructor. So what is a constructor? A constructor is a piece of code that will initialize the state of an object. Okay, state means basically variables. Okay, so let us say how do I create a constructor? Okay, I'll use this modifier, access modifier, and for constructors we'll have the constructor name same as that of class name. So I'm using public constructor. Okay, and then brackets like this. Okay, so this is a constructor. So we won't be having a return type for a constructor. A constructor looks like a method. Okay, but the difference is a constructor doesn't have a return type, and also a constructor should have the name same as that of class name. So here the class name is constructor example, and again here also the class name is constructor example. Sorry guys. Okay, so this is the so this is called like a default constructor because we are not passing any arguments here. So in this case, if I say name is equal to okay something like Rajesh, okay, and salary, okay, equals to something like okay, this is an integer variable, right? Let's say like 40,000. Okay, so what happens when we do it like this? Okay, so in this case, what happens is whenever we create an object, whenever we create an object, so this constructor will be called, and these values, these instance variables will be initialized to these values. Name is equal to Rajesh and salary is equal to 40,000. So initially, when we don't have a constructor, the values are null and 0. Okay, now what happens? Since we have a constructor, here, okay, whenever we create an object, this constructor will be called. Okay, this constructor will be called, and these instance variables will be initialized to these values, Rajesh and 40,000. Okay, let me run this one. Run as Java application. Okay, Rajesh and 40,000. Name is Rajesh and salary is 40,000. Okay, do you understand this one? What a constructor is here? Or any questions you have?
Basically, constructor is also a method, or it is not a method.
It's not a method actually. It looks like a method. Okay, because method should have a return type. And if you see like, we don't have a return type here. So you can say that a constructor is a piece of code which is used to initialize the object state. Object state means variables, instance variables, which is used to initialize the instance variables. And when the constructor will be called, the constructor will be called whenever an object is created. We don't need to call this constructor explicitly. When you create an object, then the constructor will be called automatically.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Okay. So let me comment this one. So what is happening in this case? Okay, we don't have a constructor here, default constructor. What happens generally in this case is when you create an object like this, then it will check first if there is a constructor for this one. Okay, there is no constructor here. So in the background, it will create a default constructor for this one, and it will initialize these values to the default values. That's why you are seeing this like null and 0 values, because what is happening in the real background is, okay, what is happening in the background is it is creating a default constructor for this one, and it is initializing all these variables to their default values. That is what it is happening in the background. That is why we are getting these default values for this one. Okay, but if you have a constructor explicitly created here, okay, then it will call this constructor. It won't create a default constructor. That's why you're seeing it calls this constructor and it assigns the values to these variables. Okay, do you understand this one? Or any questions?
No, it's very clear.
Okay, fine. Now, okay, so this is called a default constructor. Okay, and for whatever the object that you create, it will always assign these values. Okay, but I don't want to have like all these same values for my constructor. Okay, for my instance variables, I want to have like different values. Then we can go for an parameterized constructor. So I'll say parameterized constructor means public. Again, I should have the same name as it is. Okay, class name, and then I'll say like string name one comma int, okay, salary one. Okay, and what I will do is, okay, name equals to name one, okay, salary equals to salary one. Okay, in this case we have created a parameterized constructor. So this is a constructor, but this is parameterized. That means by creating an object we will pass these values and we will assign those values to the instance variables. Okay, let me show you this one. Okay, I'm creating a new one here. I'm creating a new object here. Okay, and the object name is I'm giving it as constructor example one. Constructor example one. Constructor example one dot salary. Okay, now for this one also it will call the default constructor here. Okay, it will call the default constructor and make it as Rajesh and 40,000. Okay, run as okay, Rajesh 40,000, Rajesh 40,000. But I don't want these default values for my second object. So what I can do, since I have a parameterized constructor, I can pass this name and a salary here. Okay, so the first one is name one. Okay, so I will say some name like Ganesh something. Okay, and the second value is salary. Let's say 30,000. This is the salary. Okay, so let me see why this is giving an error. Remove arguments to match. Okay, constructor example. Okay.
Actually, 30,000 you have put it in the quotes.
Okay. Yeah. That's true. Okay. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, because the second one is an integer, we should not put it in quotes. Okay, we should provide as an integer. Okay. Now, so what happens in this case? This is not a default constructor because we are passing parameters. So it when the object is created, it goes and calls this parameterized constructor by passing this value. So in this case, what happens here? So Ganesh will be stored in name one and 30,000 will be stored in salary one, and they will be assigned to these instance variables name and salary. Okay. So if I run this one now, run as Ganesh. So see, the first one is a default constructor. Okay, that is why it is printing Rajesh and 40,000. The second one is a parameterized constructor. So we are passing those values while creating the object. So it prints Ganesh and 30,000. Do you understand this one? What is a normal constructor and what is a parameterized constructor, and why do we use constructors?
Yes, it is clear.
Okay, so generally constructors are used for initializing the state of an object. The state of an object means it is instance variables. For initializing the instance variables, we use constructors. We can also use them to initialize static variables also, but generally for static variables, we will use something called static blocks. Okay, we will see them later. Okay, but this is what it is for constructors. Okay, now. Okay, let me see if I'm missing anything here. So a constructor is a block of code that is used to initialize the variables of a newly created object. A constructor resembles an instance method in Java, but it is not a method as it doesn't have a return type. Constructor should be declared with the same name as that of class. Okay, we have seen this one. Okay, so we have seen both the examples like a default constructor, and also we have seen about a parameterized constructor. Okay, now let me go into the constructor interview questions. So the interview questions will be mostly like, what is a constructor? Why do we use constructor? So those are the only two main interview questions that we get in constructors. We won't be getting like anything else. actually. Okay, so define a constructor, or why do we use constructors? Okay, what is a constructor? A constructor is nothing but a piece of code, okay, which will have the same name as that of class name, and which is used to initialize the state of an object, that is the instance variables. Okay, that is nothing but a constructor. Okay, and just give me like 2 minutes, guys. Okay, just give me 2 minutes. Yeah, sorry guys. Okay, so yeah, so when does a compiler supply a default constructor? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay.
Yes.
So when does a compiler supply a default constructor for a class? So we have seen this one. Okay. So when does a compiler supply a default constructor? When we don't define any constructor at all. Okay. Then the compiler will create a default constructor, and it will assign default values for the variables. Okay. That is when it supplies a default constructor. Now, will the compiler create a default constructor if I have a parameterized constructor in the class? Okay, let us say, like, I don't have this default constructor. Okay, I have a parameterized constructor here. Okay, in this case, okay, will the compiler create this default constructor and assign the default values? No, it won't. It always calls this parameterized constructor, and moreover, since we have a parameterized constructor, you can see that when I cannot create a normal object, that's why it is throwing an error. It won't create a default constructor like this because we don't have a default constructor. It won't create it in this case because we already have a parameterized constructor. So you can, when we have a parameterized constructor, okay, you cannot create an object like this. Do you understand this one? This will work only when we have any constructor at all, okay? Or when we have a default constructor, then only this will work, okay? Otherwise, if we have a parameterized constructor, definitely we have to pass the parameters when we are creating an object. Okay, do you understand this one?
Yes, it is clear.
Okay, yeah, fine. Now, okay, that is about this one. Yeah, that's mostly like, the questions on constructors will be like, what is a constructor? Why do we use constructors? Okay, those are the questions only on constructors you will get if anyone asks you. Okay. Okay.
Subbu,
Yeah.
can you give me an example like constructor overloading?
Constructor overloading. We
Mm.
don't have anything like a constructor overloading, actually. I haven't seen that one. Constructor overloading. Constructor overloading, we don't have like anything like constructor overloading. See, we have, okay, maybe you, have you had that one anywhere, like, constructor overloading?
Like it's the technique of having more than one constructor with a different parameter list.
Yeah, those are our like, parameterized constructors only. Okay.
Okay.
So maybe like, see here we have a default constructor. Okay. We have one constructor here. Okay. But I can have
Mhm.
like, something like, multiple parameterized constructors. Okay. For
Okay.
example, I'll create like, another one like this, but instead of string name one, okay, I'll use like, different, the parameters like, okay, here like this string name one. Okay,
Okay.
so instead of passing a string and a value here, okay, integer value, I'll pass this integer value first and then this value later. Okay, this is generally
Okay.
used like, not like this, but when we have like, a number of instance variables, when we have a number of instance variables and when we want to initialize only some of them, then in those cases we will create like, multiple parameterized constructors.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, now let me go to the next one.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
In constructors, can I pass values dynamically or
See, whatever the constructions that we are creating, okay, let me take out this one. Okay, here everything you pass is a dynamically you are passing it, right? So here at one place, like, when you create an object, you are passing Ganeshan 30,000. When you create like, a next one, you will pass like a different values here.
my point is during runtime?
During runtime means like passing the values dynamically means
No,
passing
I
the
want to see. I want to not like whichever I want to give the input.
I didn't get that one. Can you come again with your question?
Like I want not a single. See here we are passing two values for
Yeah,
name and salary. Like
yeah, yeah.
multiple number of argument values. For
I
again,
think
I have to
he is
create one more
asking to use
constructor, right?
he asking a user to enter the value, I guess.
No. Okay. So, okay.
Yeah, even that way.
Okay.
That is one question, and I have two
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. I mean, like, if you want to pass the values dynamically, okay. See here, like, we have only two values, right? Two instance variables. Okay, in this case, you can create an constructor with a maximum of two arguments only. Okay, but if you have like multiple number of instance variables, you can create multiple constructors. Okay, multiple constructors to assign the values based on your need. And yes, okay, when you are saying like I want to assign these values dynamically, okay, I don't want to create like I don't want to pass these values, hard coded values like Ganesh and 30,000. Okay, you want to pass these values like again, those dynamic values will be like at a different place. I mean, you might be getting them as a variables and those things. Yes, you can pass those variables to this one, and until the data types are same.
I got you. Now I got it. Okay.
Okay, if these data types are same, yes, you can pass dynamic values also. That means you can pass variable names in this one.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
want. I got you. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Okay, so that is about constructors. Okay, now let me go into the next one. Or constructors. Okay, static variables, methods, and classes. Okay, so we have seen static, right? Earlier, like we have used static keyword. So what does it mean by static? Static means something that belongs to a class and not to an object. Okay, static means something that belongs to a class and not to an object. We have seen about static variables, we have seen, and we have seen a little bit about static methods also. Okay, but static keyword can be used with class. Okay, variables and methods we have seen, and we can use it with block. Okay, but don't worry about like class, because we don't use this static classes and all those things in Selenium. I haven't like I never used that one, but just remember that like static can be used with class. Mostly we use static variables and methods. Okay, even we don't use static blocks also. I have never used like static blocks also in Selenium. Okay, okay. So static members belong to the class instead of specific instance. This means that if you make a member static, you can access it without an object within the same class or child class, and with class name in a different class. So we have seen this one earlier. Okay, when we have a static variable or a static method, how can we access it in the same class? We can access it directly. We don't need to use a class name. But in a different class you want to access it, you have to use class name. Right? We have seen this one earlier. Okay, so let me give you the same example here. Okay, where we have like some count, and then we are using a method count to increase the count of that variable, and then we are returning count. Okay, fine. Now let me run this one. Okay, so let me okay, static variables. Okay, static variables, public static void main. Okay, static variables. Okay, let's say okay, static variables are like static examples instead of just variables. I'll say static examples. Okay, so this is static examples method. Okay, so now let's say I'm creating a variable here, which is int, let's say count. Int count is equal to 0. Okay, so now I'll create a method here to increment this count. If you see this one, like we have this is a static method we have. Okay, so public void count, this is a method. Just don't get confused with this method and this variable. This is a variable that we have, and again this count is a method we have. Okay, or you can say like increment count. Okay, if we call this method, then it will increment the count variable here. Okay, from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, like this. Okay, and then we have another method which is public void, okay, show count or return count. Okay, public void, instead of void, like, we have to use integer data type here, because, okay, this is an integer that we are returning. Okay, so here we will say return count. Okay, so this is giving like a token, syntax error token, return
Braces,
count
braces,
expected. Okay, sorry,
braces.
yeah, braces is missing here. Okay. Okay, so now when we call this method, it will return the count here. Okay, so now this is a normal instance variable. Okay, this is a normal instance variable. Okay, so when we want to use like an instance, when we want to access this instance variable, how do we access this one? We access it by creating an object. Okay, let me create an object here. So static examples. Okay, so static examples is equal to new static examples. Okay, or instead of like giving this one, I'm just giving it as object one. Okay, now what will be the value of like this one? Like let us say system.out.println. Okay, and if we use object one dot return count, okay, what will be the value here? It will be 0. Okay, run as Java application. Okay, it will be 0. But before this, like if I call this one object one dot increment count. Okay, now the value will be incremented to 1 for this object. Okay, the value will be incremented to 1 for this object, and it will return the count. Okay. Okay, now if I create like another object like this, let me copy the same thing, and I'm creating another object here, which is object 2. Okay, and if I use let me show, okay, I'm not incrementing this one, but I'm just returning the count for object 2. Okay, run as. Okay, so if you see this one, because this is an instance variable, okay, this is an instance variable, that means the value will depend on the object. Okay, so when we created an object like this, okay, and we have incremented this instance variable value, the value will be incremented only for that object only. So when I am returning the count, it is returning 1 here. But for the next object, we haven't called this increment count method. That is why the value will be 0 only for this one. Okay, but let us say if I make it a static, what happens now? What happens? Since this value belongs to the class now, this value belongs to the class. So even though you created an object for this one only, and if you incremented the count for this one, okay, this will be applied everywhere, because this is like a global variable. Okay, now if I run this one, now, okay, it becomes 1 and 1, even though for the object 2 we haven't incremented this one. Since this is a static variable, now once it is incremented, okay, it will be applied everywhere. Okay, we have already seen this one earlier. Okay, do you understand this one, this program, or any questions?
So can you print this object one after line number 17?
Okay,
Can you write that so that I want to see whether it is 0 or what it?
I'm sorry, what is that one? Can I?
Can you write the print print
Okay,
statement after? Yeah, here,
okay, yeah.
yeah. Just I want to see this. Yeah,
So
got it.
initial value is 0. Okay, and then we are incrementing this one, and then we are printing this. Okay. So any questions? Okay, fine. Now, so this is about a static variable. Static variable means variables which are kind of like global, which belong to the class. Okay. Now, okay, just practice this example by having the static keyword and without static keyword, and you will understand this one. Okay. Now, similar to the static variables, okay, we have static methods also. Okay. So, just like a static variable, how do we access static methods? Okay, you can act within the same class, you can access them directly. You don't need to use a class name, but outside of the class, you have to use class name for accessing the static methods. Okay. Okay. So one interview question will be like, did you use like any static methods in Selenium or something like that? Did you use like any static methods? This question is asked to like one of my friends. So let me ask you guys, like, did you use like any static methods so far? Anyone?
Main
I
method.
think
Exactly.
main method.
Exactly. Main method. Main method is a static method because public static void main. Okay, that's what we write, right? So main method is a static method basically. Okay. Okay. So we can call a static method without any object. Okay, we don't just like a static variables. We don't need to create an object for accessing a static method. Okay, because when we make a member static, it becomes class level. Okay, and if we remove the static keyword and make it as non-static, then we must need to create an object of the class in order to call that one. Okay, so here like I have given an example here, which is public void, okay, static void my method, okay, system.out. Okay, so just a normal method like I have created. Okay, static examples, control C, control V. Okay, so static examples. Okay, so in this one, what I will do is like I'll say, I'll just create like public static, okay, void display. Okay, and I'm saying like system.out.println. I'll say hello, something. Okay, now here in the main method, how can I call this one? I have to use the class name, okay, dot display. Okay, you can use this one. Okay, let me execute this one, run as Java application. Okay, hello, it is printing. Okay, but within the same class, even you don't need to use the class name also for calling a static method. You can directly write it as display. Okay, now if you run this one, the same output, hello. Okay, but let us say I want to call this static method from a different class. From a different class, I want to call this one. So let me copy paste this one, static examples, different class. Okay, static examples, different class. Okay, so I have this one. Okay, static examples, different class. Okay, so now what I want to do, I want to call this static examples to static display method. Okay, so how can I call it in a different method? I have to use this class name in this one. Okay, so I'm using the class name static examples 2, which is nothing but this one. Okay, dot. Okay, it displays the static methods here. So select this one, display. So now if I run this one, run as Java application, and you will get like hello. Got it? Okay, so how can we call a static method within the same class? Anyone?
Without
Simply
any
don't.
class name, we can directly call
Yeah, we can directly call it. Okay, in a different
with the
class.
method name.
Sorry.
Yeah,
With the method name.
Yeah, in a different class, how should we call it?
We have to use that class name dot
Dot
method.
dot method name. Okay, so this is about a static method. Okay, now what is a static block? Okay, so we have seen constructors earlier, right? So what is a constructor? Why do we use a constructor basically?
To initialize the value for that variable, to give or assign the value to the variables.
Which variables? Which variables?
Instance variable.
Okay, instance variables, right? To assign values to instance variables. Similarly, if we want to assign values to static variables, then we use static blocks. Okay, I have never used this one so far, but just remember this one. To assign values to the static variables, we use static blocks. Static block is nothing but we use the keyword static and then flower brackets. That's it. Okay, that is a static block. Let me show you an example here. So static blocks, main method. Okay, so let us say I have two static variables here. So let's say string name int salary. Okay, these are the two static variables. Okay, because I'm using the keyword static here. Okay, these are the two static variables. Now let us get into this one. Okay, so I want to okay, system.out.println. Okay, since these are static variables, I can call them directly. Okay, system.out.println salary. Okay, now if I run this one, run as Java application, these are the default values I will get for this. Okay, but I want to initialize these values before using them. Okay, so in those cases, what I can do is I can say like static, I can use static blocks and I can initialize them. So if I say name is equal to, let us say, okay, Rajesh, okay, and salary equals to, sorry, okay, let's say 30,000. Okay, this is name and salary. So whenever, okay, in any program, generally, like where is the execution starts? When the execution starts, at what point the execution starts? We have discussed this one earlier.
Main method.
Main method, right? Main method is the point where the execution starts. But before main method, okay, this is where, okay, the static blocks will be executed first before main method, because static means static is something that belongs to the class. Okay, so whenever the class is loaded into the Java virtual machine, then itself this block will be executed and these values will be assigned to these static variables. Okay, so whenever the class is loaded, these values will be assigned to these static variables, and then the main method will execute and print this one. Okay, let me run this one, run as Java application, okay, Rajesh and 30,000. Do you understand this one? Static blocks. So static, why do we use static blocks? Static blocks are used to initialize the static variables. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it is clear.
Yeah. Okay. You can have multiple number of static blocks. Okay. For example, I have static, okay, another static block. Okay. Name is equal to something like, okay, Ganesh. Okay. And salary equals to, okay, something like 40,000. Okay. Salary is equal to 40,000. Okay. So static and name is equal to Ganesh. So in this case, how does it execute? Which ones it prints? Whether it prints Rajesh and 30,000 or Ganesh and 40,000. It prints Ganesh and 40,000 will be assigned to this name and salary. Okay, because it follows this order. First, it will execute the static block and it will assign Rajesh and 30,000, and then it will execute the next static block and it will assign Ganesh and 40,000. So if you run this one now, run a Java application, okay, Ganesh and 40,000. Okay, so it will follow this order from top to bottom. Okay, so you can have multiple number of static blocks also. So now if you go into this document, static block is used for initializing static variables. This block gets executed when the class is loaded into the memory, that means into JVM. A class can have multiple static blocks which will execute in the same sequence in which they have been written into the program. So it will execute, first it will execute this one and then it will execute this one. Okay. Okay. Now, static class. What is a static class? Okay. Basically, a class, an outer class can never be static. Okay. We can have classes inside classes. Okay, just remember this one. You don't need to worry because no one will ask you like, what is a static class, or I haven't used this static classes especially at any time actually. Okay, it's very rare that like you may be asked a question on this one, which is like what is what do you mean by a static class? Okay, so we can have inner classes in Java. If you see this one, this is a class, normal class. But if you see this one, this is another class inside this class. It is possible to have inner classes in Java. Okay, only those inner classes can be static. The outer classes can never be static. A class can be made static only if it is a nested class. Nested class means inner classes. Okay, nested static. Okay, don't worry about this one. Just remember that like only nested classes can be static. That's all. Okay, you don't need to worry like about like anything else here. Okay, I haven't seen anyone using this as inner classes or static classes. The program, even in the real-time programming also, during development also, not only in automation, like in programming also, we never like we very rarely use this one because making this creating inner classes or anything like that, it will confuse everyone actually. Okay, that's why people generally like they won't use these inner classes. But from interview perspective, okay, just have to remember that only inner classes or nested classes can be static. Okay. Okay. Now let me see. Okay, yeah. So that is about static. So what did we see about like static? What can be like static things? Anyone?
Yeah, there are static variables, static
Yeah.
methods, static class,
Yeah.
and static
Blocks.
block is there.
Okay, yeah, fine. Now static variables are static methods, anything. How do we access them in the same class?
We don't have to use the class name which our choice to to call them
Yeah,
without
we can directly call
class.
them. We can
Yeah,
directly access them. Okay, how to access them in a different class?
by using a that particular class name.
Yeah, but generally when asking, okay, if anyone asks you generally, in general, if they don't specify it as, current class or like, other class, something like that, if they ask you like, how do you access a static variable or method, you can say that by using class name. That's all. If
Okay,
they
okay,
specifically ask you, okay, how do you access it in the same class? Then you can say that, okay, static variable or method can be accessed directly, even without the class name also. But generally, if anyone asks you in the interview, like how do you access a static variable or method, just say that, okay, it is using class name dot that variable name or method name. Okay.
okay,
Okay.
okay.
Now, what is a static block in Java?
Static block is something that is used to assign the values to static variables.
Yeah, static to initialize the static variables.
Yeah,
Okay.
Which
Okay.
executes
So
first before the main method.
yeah, and moreover, that will be executed before the main method because
by the time class will be initiated.
yeah, class
By the
is
time
loaded.
class will be loaded. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
class because initially the class will be loaded, right? So all these static variables or static methods, they will be assigned to memory, some memory when the class is loaded. Okay, so then itself these static blocks will be executed. Okay, and the values will be assigned to those particular static variables. Okay, so we can have like multiple number of static blocks. Okay, So for classes, so if I have never seen anyone asking about like static classes, but if anyone asks you, just say that okay, only nested classes, inner classes can be static.
Okay.
Okay, so that is about static. Okay, so let me go into the static interview questions. Okay, so what is static keyword in Java? Static means something that belongs to the class and it doesn't belong to an object, and it is a non-access modifier. Okay, we'll see like what are access modifiers later. Okay, and it is a non-access modifier. What is a static variable? Static variable belong to the class, and static variables are shared by all instances of the class. Static variable gets memory allocated once during the time of class loading into JVM. Okay, static variables are methods, anything. Okay, all the instances of the class share the same copy of the variable. A static variable can be accessed directly by calling class name dot variable name. Okay, without the need to create an instance for the class. Okay, value of the static variable will be common for all instances. Okay, so this one like we have already discussed all these things. Local variables. Okay. So what is a static variable? Static variable basically means it should be declared outside of the method, right? In the class, then only it can be static. But inside a method, we call it as a local variable. And can we make a local variable as a static? We cannot do that. Just try this example by creating like a local variable. That means a variable inside a method and assign it like a static keyword for that one. You will get this exception, illegal start of expression. This is not an exception, but error, compiler error, you will get it, illegal start of expression. Okay, just try this one. How do we access static members in Java? Okay, using class name. That's what like you can tell it directly. What is a static method? A static method belongs to the class rather than an object. It can be called directly by using class name dot method name. Okay, a static method, okay, can access static variables directly and yeah, so not only like static, but like just say that like static method is something that belongs to the class, then an object. Okay, it can be called by using class name dot that static method name. Okay, okay. So this one, this is very okay. It's not like that priority question, like it's low priority, but the question is like it's a little bit like confusing here, but we have already discussed this one. Can static methods access instance variables in Java? Anyone? Can static methods access instance variables in Java?
No, that you have given the explanation, right?
Yeah, so we have to create an object for accessing the instance variables in static methods. We have to create an object. Okay, now when are static variables loaded in memory? Okay, when are these loaded into memory? Whenever the class is loaded into JVM, then itself the memory will be allocated to these static variables. Okay, can a static block exist without main method? Okay, let me show you this one. Can a static block exist without main method? Okay, yes, we can have static blocks without main method. Let me take out this one. Sorry. Okay. So, okay. So, can a static block exist? Yes, they will exist in the memory. Okay. So, they will exist. Static blocks exist. And can we execute this without the main method? We cannot execute this one. Okay. But let us say like now I have something like this. Okay. Let me show you this one. Let me take out like this values also. Okay. Let me run this one. Run as Java application. Okay, so what is happening here in this case? We have two static blocks. Okay, and we have a main method. So where does the execution starts generally? Like the execution starts from the main method. But if you see this one here, we have two static blocks. and we have something here, system.out.println, system.out.println. We are not calling these static blocks from the main method, but these are getting executed. If you see, I'm static block 1, I'm static block 2, because these static blocks are executed whenever the class is loaded into the JVM itself. So that is when these static blocks are executed. That is why it is printing I am block 1, I am block 2. We are not doing anything in the main method specifically, but still we are able to execute this static block, because static blocks belongs to the class and they will be executed whenever the class is loaded into the memory. Do you understand this one? So we can have like static blocks without main method also we can have. But the problem here is, if you don't have a main method, okay, you cannot execute this one. Basically, you cannot execute this one. If you see this one, run as, it won't show you anything here. Okay, but you can do this one and you can execute this one in a different class. You can call these variables from a different class. Okay, so this is what, so static blocks can be executed, okay, even before the main method, even before the execution of the main method starts, static blocks will be executed, because static blocks belongs to the class. They will be executed whenever the class is loaded into the JVM itself. Okay, so this is about static, where is it? Yeah, static block. Okay, sorry, why can a static block exist without main method? Yes. Why main method is declared as static? Okay, main method is declared. Main method is called by the JVM even before the instantiation of the class. Hence, it is declared as static. Okay, if our main method is not declared as static, then JVM has to create an object first and call, which causes the problem of having extra memory allocation. Okay, so it's a very low priority question. Okay, why main method is declared as static means, because it is called by the JVM even before the instantiation of the class. That means even before creating an object, this is called actually the main method. That's why it is always static.
So why it is written here that it is like initiated like it is called before the class, because you told us that class is loaded very first.
No. Here it is before the instantiation of the class, not before loading of the class.
Okay, I got it.
So before instantiation of the class, that means before creating an object for the class, okay, this will be executed. Okay, that's why it is always like static. Okay, only during before only the ones that are loaded like during class loading are like static variables. After static variables, like when you start executing, the main method will be called automatically. That will be taken care by the JVM. Okay. So what next one is, what is a static block? A static block is nothing but like static block is a block of code that is used to initialize the static variables within a class. Okay, so we have discussed this one. And can we have multiple static blocks in our code? Yes, they will be executed in the same order, like the order that we have it in the program. Okay, can constructors be static? Constructors cannot be. Okay, can constructors be static? Anyone? Okay, so constructors cannot be static, because what does it mean by static? Static means something that belongs to the class, but a constructor is used for objects, right? Whenever like we create an object, then a constructor will be executed. But static means something that belongs to the class, so constructors belongs to the object. That's why a constructor cannot be static. Understand this one? This is very low priority question, but if you understand the okay, constructors always belong to the object. Okay, but static means something that belongs to the class. But constructors are always belong to the object. That is why constructor cannot be static. Okay, when you will define a method as static. Okay, so when a method needs to be accessed even before the creation of the object. Okay, yeah, so generally like when do we go for like static methods? static methods. Okay, suppose like we don't want to we don't want to create an object for accessing a method, then we go for static. Okay, so every time like you are using that method a number of times. Okay, each time creating an object is a headache actually. So instead of like creating an object and accessing it, okay, we generally go for static methods. Okay, so so that we can directly access them within the same class, or we can use just the class name and the method name. In those cases, we go for static methods. Okay. Okay. Now, non-static methods cannot be referenced from a static construct. So we have already seen this one earlier. So if we have a non-static method, okay, we cannot call that one directly in a static method. We have to definitely create an object for that one. Okay. Can a class be declared as static? So only inner classes can be declared as static. Okay. So static can be applied for variables, methods, and then what else we have? Variables, methods, blocks, and classes. Right. So classes, when it comes to classes, static can only be applied for inner classes or nested classes. See, we have a class here, some class here, public class text, and then we have another class which is inner class. Okay, there we can apply static, but static can never be applied for outer classes. Okay, so I want to print hello before the main method is executed. How will you achieve this? Okay, how can we do that? We can put it in a static block. So we have seen this one already here in this example. So let us say in the main method, I am printing system.out.println. I am main method. So if I execute this one, what happens? First, this static block will be executed first, and then this static block will be executed, and then this main method will be executed. So if I execute this one, run as Java application. So I am static block 1, static block 2, I am main method. So if I want to execute something even before main method, I have to put it in a static block. Got this one? Got this point? I want to print hello even before main method is executed. How will you achieve that one? Just put it in a static block.
Static block.
Yeah, just put it in a static block and that will be executed even before the main method. Okay, so what is the importance of a static variable? Okay, static variables are class level variables where all objects of the class refer to the same variable. Okay, okay. So when I went for an interview, like some time back, the one question that that was asked to me was like did you use the static variables anywhere in your automation scripts? Okay, not in this one, but in automation script. Okay, in automation, like in Selenium, we have a concept called test ng. Okay, in test ng, like we have like different methods. Okay, what are the methods that we have? The test ng methods, we'll have like different methods in test ng. When we write a script, we'll write it as a method. Okay, each test in a class. In a class, we'll write each test as a method. Okay, I'll explain you this one at the time when we have the test ng. Like when did you use like a static variable? Generally, like we have one scenario where we have to create a new category in an application. That is one test. Okay, new category. Okay, and then we have to change the name of the category. We have to change the name of the category, and then finally we have to delete that category. Okay, so these three are different methods actually. So we cannot pass values like between these three methods. In those cases, we'll create a static variable called like static public static category. The name of that variable is category. So when we create that value, okay, we will store it in the static variable. Okay, and the same static variable will be used in the other tests as well, which is modifying the name of the category and also deleting the category. Okay, that is one question that was asked. Have you ever used static variables in your automation? Yes, we have used it where like we had to create like the one test is creating a category, second test is changing the category name, third test is deleting the category. In those cases, since we wanted to use the same category name for all these three tests, we have created a static variable and we have stored that one. But once you come to that test ng concept, then you will understand. Okay, the answer I will explain you at that time one more time. Okay, so what is the importance of static variables? Okay, static variables, if we want to have kind of like a global variable for a class which is same for all the objects, then we'll create it for static variable. Then we go for static variables. Okay. Can we declare a static variable inside a method? No. Inside a method, we cannot declare a static variable. It should always be outside the method. What happens to static variables that is defined? If we define inside a method, it will give a compiler error. Just try this one. Okay, you'll get a compiler error. Okay. How many static initializers we can have? Static initializers means they are static blocks. You can have as many as you want. Okay, we have seen this one here. Okay, we have seen with static two static blocks, but you can have as many as you want static blocks. Okay, now let me go into the next one, which is access modifiers. Okay, access modifiers, this one
So today we will not be learning about Git because you told yesterday.
oh okay, I'll tell you tomorrow. Okay,
Okay.
I'll tell you tomorrow. Like Git and Maven, I'll start with you tomorrow. Okay,
Okay.
fine. Now access modifiers. What are access modifiers? Access modifiers is an important concept. I always ask this question in every interview. Okay, so what is an access modifier? Okay, we have already seen an access modifier public in our previous examples, right? So what is an access modifier? The name itself tells you access modifier. Access, that means it will tell you where you can access that particular variable or method or anything. Okay, access modifier means it will tell you where you can access that. Okay, where exactly you can access that particular variable or method or anything. Okay, basically there are four different types of access modifiers. They are public, okay, default, public, protected, and private. Okay, for example, okay, so the same thing, whether this is static or instance variables, anything, okay, I can make it as a public. That means I'm using a public access modifier. Okay, and if I don't use any keyword here, okay, that means that is a default access modifier. I'll tell you the differences and I'll show you program, okay, how what it is. But for now, just remember that the different kinds of access modifiers and the different kinds of access modifiers. So we have seen public, and if we don't have anything, that is a default access modifier. If you have something like protected, this is a protected access modifier. Okay, you can also have something like private. So this is a private access modifier. Okay, so the four different kinds of access modifiers that we have are public, default, protected, and private. Understand this one? Okay, so
Yes, it is clear.
these are the four different kinds of access modifiers we have. Okay, let me show you an example. Okay, still we have like 8 minutes. Okay, let me show you an example here. Okay, let me create a new package here. I'm creating some new package. The package name is, let's say, I'm giving like access modifiers 1. The package name is access modifiers 1. I'm creating another package here, new package access modifiers 2. Okay, I have created two packages here. One is access modifier 1 and another one is access modifier 2. Now under the first one, I'm creating a class here. Okay, so I'm saying first program. Okay, I'm created first program. Okay, so in this one I'm saying some variable name I'm giving, okay, which I'm making it as public. Okay, public int, okay, or public, let's say course. Public course is equal to Selenium. Okay, so this is sorry, public string course, let's say string. Okay, I need to give the data type, right? So this is public string course. Okay, and then I'm using a method called public static void main string arguments and then system.out.println course. Okay, so but since this is an instance variable, can I access it directly? I cannot access it directly in a static method. So I need to create an object for this one. So let me create an object for this one. First program equals to new first program. Okay, I have created an object for this one, and using the object, I'm accessing the course. Okay, so I'm executing this one, and she's okay. So I'm accessing. So this one you are clear, right? We have seen this kind of program earlier. So I have just created an instance variable here, and I have created an object for this class, and I'm accessing this one within the class. Now let us say I have a different class here, okay, which is my second program. Okay, this is my second program. So in the second program, okay, I'm not creating like anything here, but I would like to access, okay, the first program's instance variable, which is Selenium here. So what I have to do, I have to create an object for that one. Okay, that means the same thing I have to do. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm creating an object for this first class, okay, and I'm accessing the instance variable. Okay, if I run this one now, this second program, okay, it will print Selenium. Okay, you got it? Or any we have seen this one earlier. If I want to access these variables or methods of the first program in the second program, then I need to create an object for that first program, and then I'm accessing this one. Okay, now I'm creating another class here. Okay, let us say the class, this class is, okay, third program. Okay, so this is a third program, but this one is a child class for the first program. So I'll tell you, like, this comes under inheritance inheritance concept, which we will be learning it in the next chapters. Okay, I think like after this one we have something called a Java inheritance. Okay, but for now just remember that the third program is a child class of this first program. That means I can get like all the methods, okay, and variables of this first program into this third program directly. I can use the third program object to call any of these methods and variables of this first program. So in this one, what I will do is I'm creating an object for the third program. Okay, so third program equals to new third program. Okay, so now what I will do is I will access the course, now what is that, like, the instance variable for the first program into this third program by directly using this third program object. See, you are seeing like course here. Okay, so I'll, if I run this one, I will get this as Selenium. Got this one? Or any questions you have? So I will explain you in next chapter, like what is inheritance. But just for now, just remember that when we use this keyword extends, and if we give a different program name here, that means this third program is a child class of this first program. Okay, so since this is a child of this first program, I can access the properties, and that means variables and methods of this first program into third program by using this third program object only. Okay, you don't need to create an object for this first program. So what I have done, I have created an object for this third program, and then I am accessing the variable course from the first program using the third program object itself. Okay, do you guys understand this one so far? Or any questions? See, first program is a normal program where we have a static variable. I'm showing you how to access this variable in the other programs. See, the second program is a normal program. It is not a child class of this one. It is just a normal program. So in order to access that variable, I have created an object for this first program and I am accessing this variable. This third program is a child class of this first program. Since this is a child class, I don't need to create an object for this first program. If I have the object for third program, then I can access the variables of this first program using this third program object. So I have created an object for the third program and I am accessing the first program static variable. Okay, now in the access modifier 2 package, what I'm doing is I'm creating another class. This another class, let's say I say fourth program. Okay, and public static void main. Okay, so this is just a normal program. So if I want to access the variable, instance variable of this first program from a different package, again I need to create an object for this one. So I'll say first program. Okay, first program object is first program is equal to new first program. Okay, it gives you an error because you have to import this one in a same package. It won't give you an error, but in a different package generally you have to import this one. So just move your mouse cursor to this one and you will see this pop-up, say import first program from access modifier 1. We have another first program in the first package also. Here also we have this first program, but we want to import it like from here. So you have to import it from access modifier 1. So if you move your cursor here, import first program access modifier 1. Okay, so just click on this one. Okay, now if you say system.out.println, okay, first program dot course. Okay, now if you run this one, okay, run a Java application, you'll see Selenium. Okay, now I am creating like another class here, which is fifth program. Okay, fifth program, public static void main. So in the fifth program, what I'm doing is this fifth program is a child class of this first program in a different package. Okay, so extends first program. Okay, so now I have to import this first program from the first package, which is this one, access modifier 1. So I have access to this one. So now since this is a child class of this first program, I can create an object for this child class and I can access the properties and methods of this first program. So what I will do is I'll say the fifth program okay, fifth program. So fifth program is equal to new fifth program. So now I have created an object for this child class. Now I can access the parent class variable directly. Okay, now if I run this one, run as Java application. Okay, so are you good until this point? So what we have done is we have created two packages. In the first package, I have created one class with one variable, Selenium. The variable name is course. Okay, now I can I'm accessing this variable within the same program. Okay, I have created an object for this program and I'm accessing this one. And the second program is another class. It's completely different class. There I am accessing this first program instance variable by creating an object to the first program and I am accessing that. And I have created another class which extends to the first program. That means this is a child class of this first program. Since this is a child class, I can access all the properties and methods of this first program by using the child class object itself. So here I have created a child class object and I am accessing the first program variable using the child class object. Okay, now in the different package I have created another program which is entirely different program, so which is fourth program. Okay, in this one I'm accessing the object of this first program which is in a different package by creating sorry not object but we are accessing the value. We are accessing the value of the instance variable of this program, which is completely in a different package, by creating an object for this program. The first program dot course. Similarly, I have created another class which is a child class of this first program class in a different package, because it is extending this one. Since this is a child class, I can access the properties and methods of this first program by using this child class object itself. So I have created an object for this child class fifth program, and then I'm accessing the variable of this parent class directly by using the child class object. Do you understand until this point? Are any questions? Anyone?
Yeah, it is clear, but that inheritance thing now is like
No,
difficult to understand as of
yeah,
now.
just for now, just remember that we use extends keyword. Okay, that means this program is becoming like a child class for this class. Just for now, just remember this one. We'll come into the next chapter, okay, where we will discuss more about this inheritance. Okay, so when we have something like this, the child class can access the properties and functionalities of this previous parent class by using directly. That means by creating a child class object itself, you can access them. You don't need to create an object for this first program for the parent class. You can create a child class object. So here it is, third program is a child class object, right? So we can create a child class object and we can access the parent class properties. So here, if you see course, this is a parent class object, parent class variable, right? We have declared it in the parent class, but here what we did, we created a child class object, and we are accessing this parent class property using the child class object. That's what I can just remember that one for now. Okay. So similarly, in the different package also for fifth program, we did the same thing.
So, so in the fifth program, why did you use both import and as well as the extend?
Okay, so I want I want to make this fifth program as a child class of this first program. Okay, I want to make this fifth program as a child class of this first program. So I use extends. Okay, but what happens is whenever it is in a different package, okay, it will ask you, you have to import this one. So for example, if I comment this one, okay, so it will tell you that, like, because it is not in the same package, it cannot identify, like, where this package is. It is not there in the same package. So whenever it is not there in the package, it will suggest you like to import it. Okay, import first program for access from access modifier 1. Okay, so the IDE that we are using, Eclipse, it will automatically suggest you. Don't have to worry about this one. Okay, because it is in a different package, we have to import it. That's okay. So you understand, like, all these five programs, right? Because I want to show you, like, what are these access modifiers. So if you understand this one, then you can understand, like, all these different access modifiers. Okay, you got this one, right?
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
We have created, like, two packages. Okay, and within the two packages, we have created different classes. Okay, normal classes and also child classes to one of these classes. Normal classes and child class to this one. Okay, now if you see this one, this course is a public access modifier. Public access modifier. What is a public access modifier? Public access modifier is something you can access it anywhere. Okay, you can access it within the same package in a different class or in a child class. You can access it in a different package within in a different class or a child class of this parent class. That means you can access it anywhere. It's public. Okay, got it? That's why we are able to access it in all these places, and we are able to print this value, Selenium. Okay, now let me have it a default access modifier. What is a default access modifier? Default access modifier is something, okay, that we don't have any access modifier at all. Okay, so let me take out this public, save it. See what is happening? It is showing some errors here. See, are you able to see these errors? There's some cross mark you'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me open this one. Let me open this fourth program. Okay, see what it is saying. first program dot course. If I move it here, okay, the field first program dot course is not visible. That means whenever we make something as a default, that means without any access modifier, it will be available only within that package. You cannot access it in a different package, either in the normal class or in a child class. This is a child class. This fifth program is a child class for the first program. So you cannot access it even a child class also. The field first program dot course is not visible. You understand this one? Just by making this one as default, you can see the difference. You can access it only within this one, not in a different package. Within the same package, you can access it. You cannot access it in a different package. Now, let me make it as protected. Okay, this is another access modifier. So what is happening here? If you see, only the fourth program is showing an error, but not the fifth program, because fifth program is a child class of this first program. So a protected variable means something that can be accessed anywhere within the same package, and also child classes in a different package. Protected variable, we can access it in a child classes in a different packages also. That is why it is not showing any error here. But a normal class, you cannot access it. It just tells you that this is not visible to this one. Okay, now let me make this one as private. Okay, let me make this one as private. What is happening? Private. Every other class, it is showing an error here. If you see, this is showing an error. This is error. This is error. This is error. So private means something which can be accessible within the same class only. In the same class only. In a different class, whether it is a child class or a normal class, it shows you an error that this is not visible. Okay, because we changed the access modifier to private. Okay, I will explain you again like tomorrow one more time, but just to show you this one, like today itself, like I explained it. Okay, so what are these public, default, protected and private? They are access modifiers. What are access modifiers? Access modifiers tells you where you can access a particular variable or a method. Okay, so what does it mean by public access modifier? Anyone? Public access modifier? Okay, so what does it mean by public access modifier?
You can access anywhere within the
Within the
class and the package
No,
and other
not
packages
only within the class, but within the package and also
and other packages as well.
other packages as well. Okay, now what does it mean by default? Where can we access that variable? Default access modifier
within the same
within the same package, not outside of the package. That's why you are seeing errors here. Whenever I change this one to default, that means with no access modifier, it is showing errors in other package, but not in the same package. So default means something you can access it anywhere within the same package, but nowhere in the other package. Okay, now what is it meant by protected?
within the same package, and also to access in other packages using the class name of the other package.
No. Where can we access in a different package? In the child classes in a different package.
Child class. No, child class of a different package.
Yeah, in a different package. Okay, now that is protected. That's why if you whenever you make it as protected, you are seeing that like only for the fourth program you are seeing an error, not the fifth program. Why? Because fifth program is a child class of this first program. Okay, now protected is done. Private. So what does it mean by private? Like where can we access those variables or methods when we make it as private?
Only in the defined class.
Yeah, only in the defined class. That's why when you make it as private, you can see that all these other programs are showing errors. Okay, because we made this variable as private, we cannot access them in any other class. We can access it only in the same class. Okay, so these are access modifiers. Okay, so this one I definitely ask like everyone, like almost in any interview, everywhere like I ask these things. Okay, what are the different access modifier we have? Where do I mean? What is the difference? Also, what is where do you access a public access modifier? Let's say I have two packages and I have different classes. Where do I access this public access modifier? Where do I access a default access modifier, protected access modifier, and what is the last one is private access modifier. Okay, so this is all about this access modifier. So tomorrow, like I'll teach you Git. I'll start like Git so that you can start it from now itself using Git, and also I will start you like Maven also, so that you can start creating Maven projects and you can start practicing them as well. Okay, if you do it like from the beginning, that will be very easy. And tomorrow I will also show you like you need to install like a software called XAMPP for running a local server on your machine, so that you start it from now itself, so that by the time when we reach the Selenium classes, you will be ready with all the installations. Okay, so everyone has installed Java, right, in their machine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone has installed Java in their machine. Fine. So yeah, so start like just practice like whatever like I'm telling you like all these sessions. By the end of this Java sessions, you'll definitely get a confidence on Java. Okay, if you practice well. Okay, if you practice well, by the end of these sessions, like you'll definitely get like good confidence on Java. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, so
Yeah. Any questions? Okay, yeah, fine then. We'll meet tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Subbu.
Bye.